When you think about cosmetology, you probably picture a really cool creative career, right? A chance to be an artist. But what if the whole system for getting there was actually a trap? Today, we're looking at the beauty school industry, where that promise of artistry often hides a pretty harsh reality of crushing debt and surprisingly low wages. And look, this quote from the think tank New America, it just hits the nail on the head. It really gets to the core of the problem. For so many aspiring stylists, the dream starts with an education that, as research shows, consistently leaves them with that exact combo: poor training, high debts, and low wages. So let's actually break down the numbers here. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the payoff. After all that training, the average yearly salary for a new cosmetology grad is just $16,600. I mean, that is way below what anyone would expect after investing all that time and money into specialized training. And then you've got the debt. On top of that really low salary, the average graduate is walking away with about $10,000 in student loans. So you're already seeing how this just doesn't add up, right? And here's the real kicker. The program itself costs, on average, more than $16,000. So think about that. You are paying more for the school than you're going to make in your entire first year on the job, all while going into debt to do it. The math is just, it's broken. All right, so let's really dig into this. We're calling this section a high-cost makeover, and it's all about exploring the financial trap of cosmetology education. And you might think, okay, that's just starting out. But even with experience, the picture doesn't get a whole lot better. The industry-wide average salary is around $26,000 a year. That's actually less than what a lot of restaurant cooks or janitors pull in, and those jobs don't come with a hefty tuition bill. In fact, get this, a mind-blowing 98% of these beauty programs would flat out fail proposed federal tests that are designed to make sure graduates can actually earn enough to pay back their loans. And to top it all off, less than a third of students even graduate on time, which just makes their debt pile up even higher. So the big question is, how did we get here? Why on earth are these programs so long and so expensive? Well, it turns out the answer is pretty simple. You just have to follow the federal money. Okay, so the real engine driving this whole mess is something called Title IV federal aid. Now, this is stuff like federal student loans and Pell Grants, which are for lower-income students and don't have to be repaid. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch. That money is pretty much only available for programs at schools that meet these very specific and often very, very long training hour requirements set by the state. And what this does is it creates this totally backward incentive cycle. Let me walk you through how it works. First, states require a crazy number of training hours just to get a license. We're talking 1,500 hours or more. So then, schools design their programs to be just that long. Not because it's necessary, but because it makes them eligible for the maximum amount of federal aid. Next, to pay for the super expensive tuition, students have no choice but to take on more federal loans. And the result? The school gets all of its money right away, paid by the government, while the student is stuck with the debt for years. And we're not talking about a little bit of money here. The scale is just massive. In just one single school year, the for-profit beauty school industry pulled in over $1 billion in federal student loans and grants. This isn't some niche problem. It's a huge industry that's basically fueled by our tax dollars. Okay, this next part is a really crucial aha moment. It's all about the difference between getting a license and actually mastering the art of cosmetology. Because once you understand this, you'll see what beauty school is really for. So you'd think beauty school is all about creativity, right? Well, take a look at the licensing exams. A huge chunk of what's required has almost nothing to do with artistry. It's all about public health. On the national exam, over a third of the questions are about stuff like sanitation and infection control. The state isn't really worried about how great your balayage is. They just want to make sure you're not going to spread diseases or infections. That's their main concern. This really shows that there are basically two different classrooms every stylist has to go through. On one hand, you have the school. Its job is to teach you just enough to pass the test: safety, sanitation, state rules, the absolute basics. On the other hand, you have the actual salon. That's where you learn to be good at your job. That's where you learn advanced artistry, speed, how to deal with clients, and where you get the real confidence you need to make it. There's a saying in the industry that just sums this whole thing up perfectly. Beauty school gets you licensed, the salon makes you good. The whole point of the school, legally speaking, is just to get you that piece of paper. The actual craft, that's learned on the job. Okay,
So if the main model is totally broken, is there a better way? What does that even look like? Well, let's dive into a kind of debt-free blueprint, and it's based on a real school, the Louisville Beauty Academy.
And right away, the difference is it's night and day. It's stunning. While your typical federally funded school is charging $15, $20, even $25,000, the Louisville Beauty Academy, or LBA, charges between $6,000 and $8,000. So you have to ask yourself, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible because they've built their entire model differently from the ground up. See, the typical school runs on federal loans, so its goal is to pack in as many hours as possible to get that aid money. But LBA, they said no thanks to federal aid. They're funded by their low tuition, and their focus is laser sharp on one thing, getting the student past the state's minimum rules for licensure. The result is a simple choice, high debt or debt-free. Yeah, LBA's whole mission can be boiled down to one thing: rapid, safe entry into the workforce. They're not trying to pretend they can make you a master stylist in a classroom. They know that happens in a salon. So they focus entirely on what the state actually tests, safety and compliance, so they can get students licensed, out the door, and earning money as quickly and as cheaply as possible.
So what this one school in Kentucky is doing, it actually has these massive implications for the whole country. Let's zoom back out and see how this idea could help fix the very foundation of vocational education in America. Look, LBA is basically a powerful proof of concept for lawmakers and policymakers everywhere. It shows that good, valuable job training can absolutely exist outside of the federal loan system. It puts the focus back on states, making sure people can get into jobs safely and quickly. And maybe most importantly, it just shatters this broken idea that more time and more money spent in a classroom somehow equals a better education.
And all of this really brings us to one final critical question. The whole system we've just talked about is built on one idea: that we should measure education by how many hours you sit in a chair. But what if we're measuring the completely wrong thing? Should we value education based on time served or on the successful, debt-free lives it helps people build?